Hello, welcome to Meet Your Inspiration podcast with Meri and Rich. Today we are going to speak about a very interesting and popular topic, but from different perspective. Today we are going to talk about workplace well-being and corporate mental health.
We're very pleased to welcome to our podcast today two incredible people, very knowledgeable about well-being and mental health in the workplace. Dan and Anwen from Thrivall, and we're so pleased they're going to be sharing information about mental health in the workplace and well-being. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So can I ask you, first of all, what do you think that our audience today will gain from what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, hopefully some insight into the challenge that we face at the moment in the UK and globally around mental health, and particularly in relation to what that means for business and the workplace. We'd like to share some of our research and findings and experience that we've gained from working in this area, just to show kind of better understanding about what's going on at the moment, and also a solution and sort of how we're helping to contribute to solving that problem.
Yeah, I think we'd also love to kind of articulate the business case, right, for having good mental health and well-being in the workplace. What we've experienced over the last 18 months, 2 years of building Thrivall is perhaps a leaning towards that well-being is a nice to do. Like that's if we get the time and we've got some spare cash, then we'll invest in a bit of well-being. But actually what we've been building is the business case for in properly investing in your teams and your leaders' mental health and well-being, almost just based on that really simple premise that we all know, which is happy teams are performing teams. So,
Let's start with a little bit background about you guys. Where did you start, obviously, your professional careers and how you choose the areas that you are
Yeah, sure.
doing really good now? Right?
So Dan and I have had separate businesses before we came together to found Thrivall. My background is in marketing. I've worked in marketing my whole career. So the first 10 years I was working in in-house roles, and so working my way up, and then decided to set up my own marketing consultancy around 2014. And that was all about supporting SME business owners to grow their businesses in a strategic way. And that's something I still have been doing recently as well as a consultant. Dan and I met through business networking and being involved with the Institute of Directors in Kent. We used to host the Startup Founders Network for the IOD. We used to run events to bring people together. So we've always enjoyed networking and connecting people. We then ran our own series of business events under our own brand and found we had a shared interest in mental health and became trustees of a charity that was in the mental health space and suicide prevention. We learned a lot from being involved with that. And then during the lockdown period, Dan decided to do a counselling skills foundation certificate, which is a 1-year training. And he learned a lot about counselling, person-centred counselling from that. And also this concept called proactive counselling, which is something that was new to me and something a bit different. So usually when we think of counselling, we think of crisis. And when people are in crisis, they reach out for counselling support. Proactive counselling, as the name suggests, is about reaching out for counselling support before you get into crisis. So you don't have to be struggling particularly or having a difficult life experience. It's just drawing on the skills and tool set of counselling to help people live better. Yeah. So you can be in a good place, you can be doing well, but actually we all have stresses and strains and pressures in our lives and work, which could benefit from some kind of counselling support. So that was the starting point for Thrivall, basically. And we decided to found the company together, and that's brought us to this point today.
Yeah. So my background personally is 20 years in electrical retail. So 16 years old, I was a Saturday lad in a Curry's High Street, my local Curry's High Street, and I decided that after my A-levels, I didn't want to go to university. I would revisit education. In fact, I thought about doing psychology, but at a later date. And actually, that's what brought me to the counselling course that Anwen talked about. But actually, the reason I chose counselling, not psychology, is I'd spoken to someone who was kind of an expert in the field and said it's more accessible. It was £1,400 for anybody thinking of doing a certificate in person-centred counselling. That's the foundation course. But it's also more applicable. So a lot of psychology is kind of theory, and but not necessarily practice. And
is it specialised when you do that? When you do a course on it, is it very specialised? Do you choose an area of counselling you want to look at?
So it's a really good question, Richard. So the particular course, which and there's lots of providers, and you have to be really careful as well to choose a good provider. Ours was with a company called Interpsyche in Dartford, and it's NHS authorised. Now that is bound in person-centred counselling, which is from Carl Rogers, who's the godfather of it, no longer with us. But the course is actually an integrated course. So there are many modalities in terms of counselling. What's really wonderful about this course, and I'm also still in touch with my colleagues who went on to become diplomaed and are now practicing. So that's really lovely to see them and to see how much work that they have to go through. It's a really serious undertaking once you get past the certificate course, but it's what's called an integrated course. So it brings in different modalities, because the belief of this particular course is that as a counsellor, it's focused and built around person-centred, but you also need the expertise of psychodynamic, for example. So that is based around what happened to us in our upbringings and understanding how that informs us in our adult life. So that's quite good.
Because when people are struggling like that, obviously there are always trigger points that set them off or put them back or lost their confidence, that cause them to feel really insecure. Because most of the time, I guess, around counselling it's overcoming the inner insecurities and building up a strength. Because it can really be immersive to the individual.
Yeah, it's so look, there's a whole host of reasons, right? I don't think there's no one reason why someone can find themselves in crisis. I think it would be remiss of us to kind of try and say what it is generally. We've often recognised it, the work that we do, that crisis can often come from a number of factors that we talk about. So as human beings, so it all comes back to capacity, right? So we have, and not just it's how much capacity we have. So if you are in a supportive relationship and you're in a good workplace and you have good friends and family around you, your bandwidth of capacity is quite large. Okay, so you can probably take on a crisis, like something, a family member in trouble, or a friend who's struggling, or stress and pressure at work, which is all fine. What we've started to recognise is that actually, if you are in a challenging relationship, if you're also in a toxic work environment and your bandwidth is already reduced in terms of capacity, and then it literally just takes a few more things, and then it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, perhaps.
I said that voice of anxiety, and that anxiety builds up, and then the stress normally results in some kind of outburst.
That can be, anxiety can be one trigger for it. And then, of course, and the psychodynamic modality I talked about, then there are a whole host of things which happen to us in our childhood, which can inform the way we react to things in our adult lives. I think it's important to recognise I'm not a qualified counsellor, and Thrivall works with. We have these amazing, highly qualified counsellors who are also coaches with a business background. And so I suppose to bring it back to what Anwen said is, what was really profound was finding this thing called proactive counselling, and that all of the skills and resources that counsellors have and learn in which are essentially built to help people in crisis, we recognise, and I recognised, that are really helpful for people who aren't necessarily in crisis. Okay, so it's again about going back to that kind of capacity, that bandwidth analogy. That if we can help people have more capacity and bandwidth, then they can take on more, and the likelihood of them falling into crisis is mitigated. And so for us, it's about prevention, right? And that's kind of what excites us about the work that we do. And, you know, Thrivall is not a crisis business.
Sounds exactly a bit more how you prevent your healthcare and you look after yourself, but it's a bit more to help your well-being and to keep it on track, not to go and look for help once you're already in a...
Yeah, we like to talk about the spectrum of mental health. So I think over the last 10, 15 years, there's been a huge shift in our society where people are more open, talking about mental health, or there's much greater awareness, which is a really good thing. However, I still think there is a bit of a stigma attached to the words mental health, and perhaps a bit of a misunderstanding. And people think when you say that, they think of mental ill health, and they think, what's wrong? What's the problem? They're thinking you need medical treatment or some diagnosis. But we all have mental health in the same way that we all have our physical health. And there's things that we can do to maintain our physical health and to optimize that. We can go to the gym, we can do exercise, we can eat healthy food, we can drink water, get enough sleep, etc. And similarly, there's things that we can do for our mental health to optimize that, you know, and that's what we really want to be talking about. So we also are informed by the positive psychology movement, which is a sort of newer branch of psychology. So traditionally, psychology was more around the ill health side of the spectrum, kind of looking at what's wrong with people, how can we diagnose and treat those kind of issues. The positive psychology movement is more about how do we optimize humans, how do we enable everybody to flourish and thrive, and that's sort of more what we lean into with our work.
And then peak performance psychology. So part of our story that we tell around Thrivall, and you know, for the viewers have probably guessed that where the name comes from, it's about getting everyone thriving. So in you know, at work and beyond. And so we also talk about peak performance psychology. So you guys may know the Team GB cycling. So before 2012, there was probably 1 or 2 gold medals between all for the last decade, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, so what happened, right? You know, what happened after 2012? Well, number one, yes, we got a bit of lottery funding, but actually what's really powerful is that a chap called Professor Stephen Peters, who wrote the Chimp Paradox book, which I highly recommend people checking out. And that is all about understanding the power of the mind, and you know, enabling a peak performance from that psychology and understanding. So yeah, he joined the team with a chap called Dave Brailsford, who successfully run Team Sky, and that's what changed. The sheer pervasive.
Because it's one thing to be physically fit, but you do have to have that mental ability to be able to cope with all the different things, because those guys are under a huge amount of pressure, and sort of physically they've got to get through that barrier, but there's also the mental barrier to push. Correct. When you're at the point of wanting to give up.
Absolutely right, Richard. So as a marathon runner and triathlete myself, you know, I understand, you know, because I've been doing that for 30 years. It's all in the mind, actually. Like the physical part, of course, you have to be very fit, have your nutrition all in place, you know, and I think to bring it back to what Anwen's talking about, that's the spectrum, right? So that just needs to be done. Like we know how to, you know, we are so, you You know, I'm wearing a Whoop band at the moment, little plug, but big fan of Whoop. So it's no clock on it, no nothing, no face. All it does is measure what my body's doing. So resting heart rate variability. It tells me exactly what sleep I'm doing, so I know how I can train the next day, depending on my recovery. So we've got this nailed, right? But absolutely, just as we have this spectrum of physical health that requires continual and sustained input to keep it going, and it moves, we have a belief that it's exactly the same with mental health, and what are we doing each day to kind of, you know, to build resilience, build that tolerance that we have, that kind of mental fitness we often talk about. And you know, for us, it is about a sustained approach, right?
I think as well, when you get into the workplace situation, there are so many different triggers in the workplace. So when you look at the workplace, obviously it starts with is how someone comes into work, what they've experienced either in the morning before they've come in. So that affects their whole balance. So they come in, maybe they've had some difficult situation at home. That's building up in the background. So that can be one thing. It can also be that the culture of the whole business. So if the culture's not right, then you might have a manager who's maybe micromanaging a particular team, putting them under a lot of pressure, not listening, not responding. Then there's also that the pressures of, for example, emails. People are coming into work, they've got a lot of emails and they're starting to work through it. Somebody else comes in, wants them to come and do something. So there's another stress trigger. So
Richard,
that's that balance.
Yeah,
the things there.
Let me ask you a question then. So it's fascinating to hear your insights.
Yes.
How have you done that? So, because when I hear that, I hear what a great leader who is mindful and empathetic to colleagues. Okay, that's what I'm hearing when you describe it.
Yeah.
The reality across our experience and research is that, so Anwen found this amazing stat, 82% of the managers that are in the UK are what are called accidental managers.
They're just being promoted to a position because of their ability.
Because of, technically they were good. What about all time served?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, Sarah's been here or Jeff's been here for 20 years. I can't really give them a pay rise. So, but what we'll do is we'll give them a promotion. And so then you may have heard about the Peter Principle, which is people being promoted to their incompetence. So that's rather pervasive. Mm-hmm. So really lovely to hear you describe. And I completely agree with you. You know, why do we get people to start at 9 o'clock if they don't, unless it's a customer facing role?
Yep.
Because what you're asking someone to do is to sit in the worst traffic, the most stressful time, or public transport at its worst. Now, they're then going to, how long does that take to unwind?
Probably 20 minutes to half an hour.
At least, right?
Yeah.
So you've made them waste their time because they've probably had double their journey time just sitting in there. Then you've impacted their efficiency at work because they just need to kind of, like you say, they need half an hour just to get rid of that.
Yeah,
why wouldn't you, if you're in an office job, let them say, log on from home, start in the morning, and then come in after 9? And so, but I think it takes empathetic leadership, right?
Absolutely. And I think to pick up the point about the accidental managers, you know, what you were describing there, as Dan said, you've got the empathy and awareness of the challenges that we might be facing. Not everybody has cultivated that level of awareness of themselves or of other people. So that's sort of what we're looking to do with the Thrivall program is give people tools and techniques to develop that self-awareness, to develop that awareness of others, and therefore empathy, so that they can be better leaders and better managers.
I think that's our big why, isn't it? Our big why, and what we find most exciting about Thrivall and the work that it does in terms of, you know, the purpose of the business. We believe that when human beings have a better feeling of self-worth, that enables them to be more self-aware, and as Anwen says, therefore aware of others. And then you can lead with empathy and kindness in the world. And so that's the kind of world that Thrivall believes in. And what we find really exciting is that, you know, we're two business owners that have dragged businesses out of nothing. So we understand that challenge. We're not like perhaps some of our other comparators that are doing some great work who are have been built by clinicians, psychologists, or doctors, or therapists. We are business owners who have looked to build a commercial offering to do to create more impact in the world. Okay, so for us, when I first started talking about this with Anwen, I was like, we can't, proactive counselling we just know, and 2 years later, we've got the evidence to prove that it has such a powerful positive impact on human beings. But at the time, I was like, we can't wait for the NHS. Waiting times for counsellors have gone from 6 months to 9 months. So I said, we need to look to the third sector to create this change in the world. And so we really are looking to amazing, pioneering leaders that are looking to pioneer a new way of working. Because what really drives us is if we think about that we're probably all closely connected to at least 5 people, our partners, our siblings, our parents, our friends. So for us, as Thrivall works and builds and grows, if we're working with 1,000 colleagues across different organizations, what really gets us out of bed in the morning is we're actually impacting the lives of 6,000 people. And so as we work with 1 million colleagues, we're actually impacting the lives of 6 million people, because we know that through a Thrivall program, men can be better husbands and fathers and brothers and friends, and women can be better wives and partners and mothers and all those kind of things. And for us, so that's why we talk about getting the business owner and your colleagues thriving at work and beyond. It's not like a leadership workshop or leadership.
But it sort of covers those, isn't it? Because really there's 3 aspects really. I mean, obviously you have the mental well-being is one aspect, leadership training is the other, and corporate structure and how the corporate is running in terms of how the environment is for people.
Like he's teed us up, isn't it?
Yeah, we definitely work on 3 levels through the program. So as we said, every individual will benefit on a personal level. Then the managers and the leaders of the business are going to benefit as well. And then on a sort of structural level, as you say, we're kind of working with the organisational development, and we talk about business improvement, don't we? So we're looking to improve the business bottom line
through its big
people. Yeah.
And I think that's who's the chap that we quote? Lencioni. Patrick Lencioni. Another book to check out would be The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. And we use this in our keynote, don't we? We say at one point, we kind of break this quote up where we say it's not finance, it's not strategy, it's not marketing, it is your team which gives you that remains the biggest competitive advantage. And so that's that silly analogy that I use about, if you've got a £1 million wage bill, okay, let's liken that to £1 million worth of machinery. And, that machine is your business. It's, you're from manufacturing.
It turns out the product.
Right, it turns out the product. But if it breaks down, that's a problem.
Yep.
So would you let a completely unqualified engineer on one of your clients' multi-million pounds worth of machines?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. You're not going to let them repair it, service it, or anything. You're going to pay top dollar for the best engineer, because that is the heart of that manufacturing business, as well as your people. Yet, if you've got an equivalent £1 million wage bill, we let all these untrained, ill-equipped, and I think that's a really interesting probably point to make, Rich and Maria, is that, have you heard the saying, people don't leave jobs, they leave people?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we do have this kind of perhaps lament. We talk about good boss, bad boss, right? But let's flip it around and look at the other side, where we found a piece of research which said actually 70% of managers feel ill-equipped to have a conversation. So if they know that Maria's struggling personally, because you hear stuff, right? And so, but the manager won't ask Maria, how are you doing? Just in case you go, actually, I'm really not very well. Because that manager's not feeling resourced or equipped to be able to respond and support. So then they don't ask. Actually, they just stay in their office. But Maria's experience is, that manager doesn't care. That's a bad boss. So I think it's really important we talk about that, don't we, to understand.
It's the good side of your training, that you go on all levels, because this is where most of the problems come. And recently, thanks to the podcast, we met really good leaders, and this is something that make them different than usual, that they are really looking after the people, and they said that for them this is the priority, this is the first step. But the thing is, I wanted to ask you this question: how you find the businesses? Are they starting to ask a bit more? And obviously you're running different workshops and network events. Are they starting to come and get involved to know more about well-being and start to look after the people? Because I don't think this was quite a point up until the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I think we've been sort of developing as a society, as I said earlier, with our awareness and understanding of mental health. So it's definitely something that's sort of shifting up people's priorities. I think around the time of the pandemic, it sort of went up to number one for lots of businesses, because people were thrown into a crisis in lots of different ways. And then since we've come out of the pandemic, we've had the cost of living crisis, and lots of people have been squeezed financially. And I think there's been a bit of a sort of fallout and some lagging kind of issues as a result of the pandemic as well, sort of underlying within our society. So I think it's still a very common challenge for lots of people. So lots of businesses are looking to address this. I think it's definitely the more forward-thinking ones who are actually really willing to invest in their people and really stepping up to take action. I think there's a lot of businesses out there who still see it as a nice to have rather than a need to have.
There's a gap.
Yeah, there's definitely some people who are like, that's sort of something we would do if we have some spare cash. They are perhaps not putting it number one. There's lots of people out there doing what we call well-being washing. And the tick box thing, we create days. Yeah, we're getting some fresh fruit delivered. We're offering people a massage once a month,
which is great.
It's better than nothing.
Help. It's better than nothing. Right? But
is it really shifting the dial?
It's such a good. So it does help. There was a report out which you may think that we wouldn't quote, which basically said that all wellbeing initiatives are a waste of time and money. That was in February this year. But the key word is it's initiative. So what has gone before, and perhaps for the last decade, is we run a wellbeing day this year. So that's us tick. That's the box tick. That's the wellbeing washing part. But the dial isn't moving. There isn't a change.
Because you're not changing the psychology.
Or the culture.
Getting to the root of the cause.
Yeah. And so actually, to back up exactly what Anwen has said, yes, there is more of an appetite. However, there is the gap that Anwen talked about between people understanding that there is a return on your investment in your people when you spend and look after it. But there has now become, we are now, the fallout of wellbeing initiatives is that people are actually bored about talking about wellbeing. C-suites, CEOs, boards, what are we having to do for wellbeing now? So that is because of what has gone before. And that is why Thrivall, we talk about proactive mental health, well-being and peak performance psychology, and that's why we chose not to just be in the well-being space, because it's not regulated. People can be a well-being expert by doing a course over the weekend. And look, this is not to, any of this stuff is better than nothing, right? So we uphold and champion anybody in this space, but it has to be sustained. It has to be long term. And our experience is that when you do that, and it makes the cultural change, that's when the dial shifts. And so what Thrivall talks about is sustainable employment. So we talk about creating sustainable employment, which we have built 4 pillars under. That is good mental health, good well-being, peak performance psychology, and leadership. And so just to kind of draw a comparison to others in our space, the outcome that often well-being businesses can look for is, will help your colleagues have better well-being. So that's it. That's what we want to do. At Thrivall, that's just part of the pillar. That's the well-being, the peak performance psychology, the good mental health, and better leaders. The outcome that we're looking to create for businesses is more sustainable employment. And what we mean by that is that as a business owner, you have a sustained workforce that stay longer. You have to recruit less, onboard. So you can immediately see the cost saving there. So that makes investable sense as a business owner, that actually I'm hanging on to people longer. They love where they're at.
Do you think if you went into, like, let's say you had, as you came into work, so imagine you sort of like, there is like like sometimes you go to a place and like, how was the service? And you hit the smiley button because it was great, amber because it was medium, and red because it was terrible.
Sure.
So if you were coming into the workplace, before you guys did any work with the company, and you've got that, and so as someone's clocking in, coming into work, they're giving, every time they come in, they're dreading work, and they press the button or they press the amber, but no green.
So have you heard of colleague experience is a thing now?
Yeah.
So
experience.
So colleague experience. And so just quickly, there's actually sustainable employment is actually, the power of it is it's two-sided.
Yep.
So I've talked about the business owner side. That's great for the leaders that they've got this sustained workforce. But on the other side, it's the employees have a sustaining work environment that looks after them and their health. Okay. And so actually they want to stay. That's why they're staying longer, is because rather than going to work and feeling depleted and going home knackered,
They feel valued.
they feel valued. And actually we believe in creating a place.
More. They do much more. This is my point from employee side.
Yes.
I would say I always believe, and I think that if a company invests much more in own people, it's much better. Why you need to go and hire new people and again go through all this process where I read recently that sometimes people are ready to pay £6,000 or £10,000 to hire a new person rather than give someone just 5,000 or 3,000.
Correct. But also the missing
price.
part to that cost. So currently, I think the last stat I saw is in like professional service, obviously above average salaries. Current new colleague cost is £38,000, because it's not just the £10,000, £20,000, whatever that recruitment fee. There's 6 months of onboarding and training before they're actually up to speed. I think Anwen's probably the best person to answer your brilliant question around colleague experience, because the key to Thrivall is evidence. Everything we do is evidence-based. This is not something that Anwen and I've experienced in, Peru and come back that we want to share with the world, because,
I was going to pick up.
So just on the benchmarking.
Yeah, the point that you made about the scoring idea. So that's part of what we do as well. And again, maybe something that differentiates us from some other people in the space who are just more about delivering training or delivering coaching, and those kind of services. So we do have data collection as part of the program. We do regular employee surveys looking at well-being, how people are feeling, and also engagement. So something that we're really interested in, and go back to some of the challenges that we're facing as a society at the moment. We know that in the UK we have a productivity crisis. We are down at the bottom of the scale in terms of other countries around the world, in terms of how we're performing, in terms of productivity. We know there's also an engagement crisis. There's a stat from Gallup that shows something like 90% of people are not engaged with their work, which is pretty shocking.
90%.
Yeah.
Only 10% care about and are engaged with their work.
So we've got these two really big, we believe, interrelated issues. And we believe that well-being is really fundamental and the foundation to create productive, engaged people. We collect data through the program. We do a baseline survey at the beginning to understand where an organization's starting from, and then we repeat that every 6 months so we can compare and track their progress over time.
How long is your program? Because obviously it's not, as you said, it's not just you go, you do your training.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an ongoing year-round approach.
Okay.
So we do a 3-month sort of trial period so people get to test it out and see what it's like, and get a flavour of what's to come. But we ask people to commit in principle for 12 months initially. So it's kind of like when you join the gym, you're not just going to go for a month or two and then give up. You're not going to get the benefit, are you? So you would generally sort of commit to going to the gym for a year, and if it works out and you like it, you would continue, right? The idea is that it becomes part of the culture, it becomes embedded in the organisation. It's just ongoing. So as long as they're getting value, they would carry on. Why would you stop?
No, you don't.
And if you're going from 90% unengaged to becoming 60% or 50%,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
an already huge step.
Exactly.
I think what's really interesting, guys, is that as we in its conceptual stage of Thrivall, and this is like why it's so wonderful to work with a business partner like Anwen, because she did go to university and she is ridiculously intelligent and researches everything and is this ferocious reader and devourer of information and knowledge and statistics. So we knew we wanted to make this evidence-based. We want to prove the business case, right, for continued investment, because that makes sense for a business point of view.
It is, because they're more looking for a return on investment. If they buy something, they're looking at what they've purchased and how quickly it's going to hold back.
As you should.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that may also be part of the gap, right? Which is like, look, the reality is it's long-term thinking. Okay. So this is
not a quick fix.
Not a quick fix, as people often want, but what it is. So we want to evidence it, but we also want to evidence it not just for us, but for the business owners to go, as a pioneering leader, I had a gut feel and I took a leap of faith. And that's what we can say about our clients that we work with at the moment, is that they've done that jump. But to testament to Anwen, we couldn't find a survey. There's loads of engagement surveys off the shelf. There's a few well-being measurements, but actually Anwen had to build our one. So we've not come across yet an engagement and well-being survey. And a big part of what we do is talk about the benefits to the business, of course, because they are making the investment. But what's really, heartening is that we're getting these really positive, increases, even with organizations that we're working with who have hit difficult times. Okay. And I think that to see that is great. But then because we also survey for feedback around the wellbeing workshops they're being on, and we probably should mention that it's a very simple program, that our premium offer, our kind of middle offer, is that that an organization, and our aspiration is always that it's whole organization adoption. So this is not something that's like private healthcare for the senior leadership team, or we don't need this at the senior leadership team. This is just for the staff. This is a whole organisation adoption program. And even if, as we're doing with some larger organisations, we work with cohorts. So if we're working with a 20-person cohort, that cohort is director through to graduate or new starter. Okay, so that's really important. And that, as Anwen said, we do an initial baseline survey, and then they get a full onboarding. So everybody understands what the Thrivall program is, because back to Anwen's point, people have their perceptions, right, around if they see proactive counselling, they may just hear counselling.
Exactly.
So we have these. We need to make sure that they know that they're going to get a wellbeing training workshop, which is in person. So one of our core principles that I mentioned earlier is we're a person-first company, and so we'll always want to do things in the room. We can also hybrid and remote, as we do with some of our clients. So they have that group training workshop, which is just an hour and a half. But it's about low content light, conversation and workshop heavy.
How many people would you have in a group when you do that?
Max of 14, because otherwise you can't. If you go too big, you can't have the conversation that's required. We have found to embed learning, and then that's month 1. Month 2, you have your what we call one-to-one check-in, and so that is with a qualified counsellor who is also a coach and has a business background. Okay, that's also personally matched to you. So it's not like what's right now, which is these great crisis helplines. It's like, well, call the line and you'll get someone.
Which is so general and not understanding.
It's not, and we've found evidence which proves to get the best outcome from any kind of relationship, coaching and counselling, is the rapport that's built. So we have wonderful group of Thrivall Associate Councillor Coaches that people get bios, videos, and they can choose who they're drawn to. And then we also even allow them to, if they've had a couple of sessions and they're not feeling that rapport, we allow them to one revision.
Well, we met some of them a few weeks ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so we had that opportunity to come and obviously meet, and it was quite interesting. And they're all such great, personable people. It makes life easy.
It's so, I think it's such a powerful thing to kind of, we call it a check-in, because remember we talked about the spectrum. Okay, so in an organisation, because it's whole organisation and it's an opt-out program, so everybody is automatically on and experiencing it, you get different needs. And that's why our counsellor coaches are so unique almost, is because they have the ability that if you're coming in and in a great space, but you've got a pitch coming up, that's going to be a coaching conversation, right?
Yep.
If you're, if you've had a life event and something's happening at home, you're probably going to need to talk to that point. So they're going to use their counselling skills. And I think that's the power. And when we were building this and we were engaging with coaches, we were asking, and there are amazing coaches out there. We've had one on our advisory board, and part of the positive side, apology movement. We said, what happens? Because coaches often get very, close to their people they're coaching. We said, what happens if something comes up for that person? What happens if they are suddenly finding themselves struggling? And they say that they can't help them because they're not qualified. And so for us, we have the people that can support whatever that needs.
Yeah.
And I suppose, just as a final point on that, what we found really validating, and I say we, what Anwen found, the amazing research that she is, 6 months into building this concept together of blending of this proactive counselling with professional coaching and wellbeing training, is 2 things. Actually, you found one, which was Professor Nash Popovich from UEL University had built this and authored this book called Personal Counselling, which is
Personal consulting.
Thank you, personal consulting, which is all about blending counselling and coaching, and that the two need to work together. And there is an entire course built off of it. So we actually had the privilege of meeting and taking Dr. Popovich out Professor Popovich out for dinner, and just hearing where that all came from, and just it felt so validating that, again, back to evidence base, and we'd had this kind of hypothesis of an idea, and yet it was already out there. And then also another book to check out would be by Dr. Julie Smith, and the title is Why Has No One Told Me This Before? And that, again, really validates. And she's got some amazing content. She was born out of COVID. She's got some amazing Instagram. She's a 10-year practicing professor of psychology. And I don't know if you know, but in psychotherapy, but also in counselling, the reason that counsellors and psychologists have these resources is because if someone's in crisis, you don't just fly in and start, unpackaging everything. What they have to do is give people the resources to be able to cope with discussing these difficult subjects, okay?
And most people are very closed in that situation. If you're, people tend to be very defensive and they don't want to listen.
Certainly, and even more so in Britain, perhaps, is maybe the case, right, Richard? So yes, that, but also that you're about to let's open Pandora's box, and you can't do that as a professional in counsellor if your client is not resourced to be able to deal with what because you may be talking about traumatic events, right?
They obviously could break down in tears. They're very emotional.
Well, you could. This is why it's so, and this is again why we're in the space, because of the governance that covers it. You could break them. Okay, so the title of the book, Why Has No One Told Me This Before? And the premise of Dr. Julie's book is, you don't need to be, like me, a professor and a 10-year practicing psychology to learn and understand these resources. And so the title of the book comes out from this session that she was having with a client, and she was giving her these coping strategies, is what they are. And this woman just shouted at her, "Why has no one told me this before? Like, I could have used this and it would have stopped me falling into crisis." And so to find that, I can remember buying you a copy, didn't I? And I was just like, talk about validating the Thrivall hypothesis.
What inspired both of you to get into this mental health and well-being? Obviously, from marketing, just from your background, what was that point that?
It's a combination of things. I think kind of going back to our origin story, I think for the fact that we're both business people ourselves, we both have a passion for growing business and improving business, also for personal development for ourselves and helping other people to develop on a personal level.
I think we can also talk about I start when we do our Thrivall, if we're asked to keynote. So we've done a number of keynotes at HR conferences and business events, and we think it's really important to tell kind of stories, right? And that connect. And for us, these aren't, we think it's incredible that people, suicide survivors, tell their stories. So it's not that, but I start our Thrivall talks with the line, I still remember the time calling my regional manager and telling him that I can't do this anymore. And that was back in my corporate electrical retail days, and I was up running some big stores in London, and I was kind of like a store fixer. I was one of those kind of reliable, high-performing managers that would be like, "Dan, we got a problem in this store. I'm going to move the manager out. Can you come and sort it out?" Now, loved it. But you can imagine, because I think you guys have probably been in that fixer role, it takes a lot of energy. You're not taking over a well-oiled machine. You're taking over people who have not been treated well as a store team, broken systems, broken processes, stock loss, all these kind of things. So that takes more energy than normal.
Because you've got to really change that culture. You're straight away going into that particular organisation, in that case, like a shop, and you're going in and changing the whole structure of the people to make them feel valued.
Well, you touched on a point earlier. Do you remember you said when you were talking about the person arriving at work and feeling stressed, and also you don't know what they've experienced? So what I found most profound in those years of because I've been running stores since I was 22. At one point I was the youngest ever appointed Dixon's High Street manager. It's ridiculous. 22-year-olds in charge of 12 colleagues and 5 million turnover store. But so you need to learn, right? And what I found in taking over, particularly that wasn't in the early days, but particularly in the latter half of my career, in taking over those struggling stores, is that often they had the bad boss, who 9 times out of 10 I did know, and they were nice enough in a manager's meeting, but I kind of felt there was an insecurity there. And I think I've linked most bad bosses, if not all, to desperate insecurities, and for all sorts of reasons they become bullies and not great bosses. And when you talk about that, you often see, and I see you both nodding your way there, and we've all had that experience. And so therefore we talked about trust before coming on here, and they won't trust you, and so that needs to be built. I always talk about reviews, not performance reviews. Yes, I'm going to talk about performance, but let's just talk about you. So I always started my reviews with my management team, and I'd often do a couple of months of reviewing all the store team myself. And these are teams of kind of anything anywhere between 20 and 60 people, so quite large teams. And I'd start the review by saying, "How's it going?" and almost every time, so they would say, "What?" And I'd say, "Well, yeah, how are you?" And they'd say, and they'd literally say, "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Do you not want to talk about my numbers and this and that?" And I'm just like, "No, just like, how are you?" And so suddenly you're starting to change this culture of, oh, this guy actually cares about us.
So you're breaking down their immediate, because they're covering all that up, how they really are. Because if they're in a situation where they're controlling people.
Well, absolutely. Well, what you often find is that reviews or performance reviews are just a beat up session. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And so anyway, back to the kind of digress for the story is, I'd been doing that without a holiday at this particular time for 10 months. I'd taken on a particularly difficult team, and I was out of energy. I was burnt out, which on reflection, now I was lacking. My regional manager, who's still a very good friend to this day, said, "I'll be right there." And I said, "Oh, what?" He said, I said, "I'll be right there. I'm in North London. I was in South." He said, "I'll be right there." And within the hour, he'd driven all the way, just dropped everything, and then we just went for a walk around the store. And I was worried that I'd got myself to this point to support my family. I created a grade and had a package and a salary. And what I thought I was asking him was to kind of give all of that up, because I just couldn't do it anymore. And none of that happened.
Do you think it's a good idea? I've noticed that a few things recently in businesses, and some of the talks I've heard, where some of the professionals talk about using a code word in the workplace. So if someone's got a bit of a crisis, I mean, one I heard recently, it might have been Simon Sinek who said it, I think, and introducing the workplace, or if someone's got a problem, they just use the word mud. So if they're talking and all of a sudden they just go mud, and all of a sudden you realise that person, they're not saying I've got a problem, but it's just a code word to say.
I think that's a good. I think it's
Well, that's a new one.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing in a toxic work environment. So if you have to have a code word, that feels like the pizza code for women who are in abused relationships.
But the thing is that if your manager is not supportive and good, to who actually?
Who can you then go? Because you can't always go around them. Because if you go and talk to the boss,
so that's the end of the story that I tell, which is that my boss was credible and said, "Go and take a week off. You'll be signed off with stress," and I was. But I didn't want to take any more than a week. Goes back to tolerance, right? Falling off the bike, let's get back on. He was wonderful and said, "I'm going to put you as an extra to go and work in." It's one of my mate's stores up in London, big mega store. Great, that's just what I need. Releases the press. I knew the guys, knew the assistant manager team, knew the team. I knew that they were happy, that they were pleased for me to be there, and for me, I got to spend time with it. He was like a mentor to me as well. The store manager, great, and a good friend, perfect. 3 days there, I'm thinking this is just what I need, just to get resources back, right? And then my boss calls me back up and says, "I need to ask you something that I don't want to ask you, and there's only one answer you can give me." And I'm like, right. He's like, "Can you go and run Mile End Megastore, one of the biggest stores in London?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "I know, but I've been told if you say no, that's basically the end of your, you're going to be passed up for other promotions. We need you. They need you in that store. I said, so it's yes then, is it? And so now I'm, having to travel even further from Kent up into deeper London, Blackwall Tunnel, just not what you want. Now, look, I got really lucky. The assistant manager population that was at that store were fabulous. And we smashed it for a year that I was there, right? So it all worked out. But the point of the story that we talk about, that it's not good enough just to have good leaders or a good leader if the culture doesn't support what they're trying to do. And that essentially was, I had 20 amazing years in that organization, loved it, had so much, I am the leader I am today because of it. Training was incredible. The reason my wife and I and our 2 children have a lovely house is after those, I have a roof over our heads. So extremely grateful. But there was a point which I was like, oh, okay, and I was finding myself, I could talk about umbrellaing, don't I, the corporate rubbish that's coming down, because I would never
Running off you then a little bit.
Well, it kind of, for me, I protected my teams and my regional managers protected us. But then there was this kind of middle management, and the C-suite were incredible as well. But there was a purveyance of middle management, of overpressure, of, kind of bullying and stuff like that. You go, no, okay, let's go and do something else, which is fine.
I think this is what is best for your business, and I personally like a lot the company culture and that you involve everybody, because for me it's very important is to not separate the people. I do of course appreciate, and you always respect the senior management, CEOs or whatever, but this bond that you can have and you can work together to achieve, because everybody got at the end of the day the same goal.
Everybody has equal value, right?
And this is what I like here, that you work with everybody as a team together.
What do we talk about? So to back up exactly what you're saying, we have an advisory board where we're fortunate enough to have both a doctor of psychology and a professor of psychology on our board. Our doctor of psychology, Christy Marsh, is at the Kent University, so we speak there, and we're building an academic partnership with those. And what did she find in her research, Anwen, to get?
Yeah, it's just about the power of leaders. So she studies positive leadership, and there's a lot of research that she's sort of found that shows when leaders are engaged in a program such as Thrivall, they are obviously benefiting themselves personally, but they're also sending a really strong message to the team by role modeling and showing everybody that this is a priority. It's very easy for a leadership team to sign up to something for the staff to engage with, and they're too busy going off doing other things. But if they turn up to the workshop and participate, and they're having the one-to-one sessions, it shows the team that's expected, that everybody should be doing this.
It's a role modelling piece, isn't it? We do it on our onboarding.
Absolutely, yeah. We wouldn't want the leaders there from the beginning to champion the programme and to explain.
When you've got your 14 people in the group, so you've got 14 people, so would you want someone from the senior management team in there, then someone in the middle management team,
the whole,
and then individual departments?
So we've had, if you've got a 40-person organisation, you're going to have 3 group training workshops, and we do the same when we onboard, and it has to be the spread. It's not just leaders, and it's because for a couple of reasons. The one thing that we didn't expect, so when you put something together, we have these hypotheses about helping people be better within themselves, have a better feeling of self-worth, be more self-aware, more aware of others, more embracing of diversity, all of those kind of things that we predicted have come true. But something we didn't realise was the team build effect. That's it. And actually our clients talk about it being palpable, particularly for one of our clients who started, who's always been a pretty remote team, but they would come together for the training sessions. So they couple their all hands meetings where they'd come together with their Thrivall training workshop, and we literally saw the shared language that came out from these training wellbeing workshops
Because you're breaking down a barrier at that.
Correct.
Because there's two sides of that. Because you've got the senior management where they will almost want to, you'll say your thing, and they'll want to be the leader and see to be the leader in the room. And then you've got the person at the other end who's maybe working on the shop floor who's also in this. And all of a sudden, this is the first time they'll have probably integrated with a senior manager or a senior director.
And then they see them as people.
Yeah.
Our workshops are definitely a great leveler.
Because it does, that's what it's got.
Everyone is very
that's
equal.
the point.
Everyone has great,
Everyone has value. Yeah.
And because of the nature of the topics that are being discussed, it is people coming in on a human level to gain personally.
But it's not touch. I think
It doesn't. Yeah, it kind of doesn't matter like what your position is.
because we're here to talk about human skills, and I think again another piece that we talk about, and this is just reality. This is not criticism. That there are a generation of business owners, which are most business owners are of an older generation, who will go well-being. That's a bit touchy-feely, okay. And I think again, what Thrivall's been built around is no. But these are skills which are going to make your organisation, your people, and your organisation better, and it's going to improve the organisation. And a really good example I like to share is we have this wonderful active listening workshop. So that is an entire workshop just on listening. And there are some amazing stats that are in our workshop, like, we're all taught to read, write, no one's taught to listen, yet we spend 80% of our time.
But very often people don't listen, or they listen with us just to
listen to speak.
And
so
it's not like to understand about.
Absolutely right, Maria. So, but something that I'd never thought about until we started running this workshop with our clients was it becomes almost a contracting that happens, okay? So if you've been in a room and you've all had and shared that workshop around what true listening is, if you're then with your line manager and you don't feel that they're actually listening, okay? So you've got something really important that you want to share with them and they're on their laptop and they're, yeah, you get to say, hey, boss, do you remember we did that active listening workshop? And that's the beauty is there's the contract, there's the shared language. Shut the laptop. You're so right, Jeff. Jeff's always in my story.
Jeff, Carl, Dave,
and Sarah.
Yeah, going back to sort of another thing to make our workshops unique is that I think you quite often go off on training programs and it's a death by PowerPoint. You're all sitting in rows, taking lots of notes and just listening to somebody broadcasting information at you.
Because they're an expert. They've done all the training.
And they're, often overwhelming you with too much information. You go back with your workbook and your notes and you put them on the shelf and you never look at them again and you forget half of it. So we're very mindful of not wanting to go down that route. We share quite a small amount of information, just a few key facts and interesting pieces of information.
Start conversation.
And then it's more about giving people a tool or a technique or a strategy to practice. And it's something very practical that they can take away and actually use in their day-to-day work and at home. And the other thing that we do is opening up conversations. So as Dan said, it's kind of shared language comes out of that. People open up. We're not doing group therapy. We're not asking people to sort of share anything personal, but quite often just the nature of the topic.
Exactly as we did the other day.
Create.
This is what
Enable people to share things, but that's their choice.
I think
people need to know, obviously, and it's a good time to let them know about this well-being.
Let's say what Richard and Maria are referring to is that they Thrivall is part of the leadership team for Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing, which is a peer.
It's a network. It's a national network. So it's across the UK. But yeah, we champion in Kent Hub.
We're on the in-person event, don't we?
And yeah, we run events here every few months, bringing together.
Here is the Maidstone Innovation Centre.
Indeed, we bring together HR professionals, business leaders, and anybody who runs a team who has an interest in workplace wellbeing. And it's really about people sharing their own experiences of things that they're doing in their organisation, things that are working well, challenges, and opening up conversations so people can look.
This is what I would like to mention because, obviously we've been invited to come and join where we feel like it's not our place. But once the They were three really interesting, I wouldn't say lectures, but speakers, where we were absolutely blown off with the information they share. And after that was this point that we needed to get in
The round tables.
And this is the moment where my anxiety is getting really high levels, because especially when you are surrounded by all these HR people, directors of businesses. But in the minute we sit down, and obviously this is the way how you did it, and I absolutely love it. It's not like you have to do this or that or listen. It was just a nice opening conversation. I remember there were 10 that you have to talk on each table.
For the questions.
Yes.
It was unbelievable. Oh, the people that we sit down with, and I was impressed to hear how businesses are doing so much about their people, and how there was that company, new mates done.
Yes.
But yeah, the lady was gone through so much, and they literally had such a great company culture.
Like a supportive culture.
And so, yes, and at the end, you can hear how all the tables had that conversation, mixture of so many different people.
Well, that's such great,
Doing some great stuff.
and great feedback for us that you felt safe. And that's what we try and create.
At the beginning, I was very worried. Oh my God, can I say this?
How can I contribute?
Exactly.
How can we contribute? We're not in this field, so like, how are we going to contribute?
Once we left the building, it was totally different feeling. Of course, we connect with most of the people after that. I took that to my business's company where I'm working to share with them, because I'm sure they'll
benefit from it. And I think that's what it's all about, right? It's all for us, it has to be about impact, about positive impact. So, we talk about unleashing the power of your people. Okay, that's a big part of what Thrivall does. That's making sure leaders are taking care of their own well-being, making sure that managers are learning the human skills to manage their team better, for want of a better phrase, be the wings beneath their team's wings, rather than thinking that they're somehow in charge of all these people, but they're actually in service of those colleagues. For the colleagues and teams, to have the resources and the capacity to, to produce their best work. Because for us, it is about, helping people be their best, and for us, it all comes down to that, which kind of links into something that we're both very passionate about, which is actually business as a force for good.
And I love to pick up on that, because when you asked the question earlier about what motivates us to do what we do, I mean, that's my answer to the question. So, I'm very motivated by how can we create positive impact in the world? How can we align to something beyond just making money? And yes, we need to make money to pay our bills.
And in fact, it's really important, isn't it? When we talk about this, is business as a force for good. Well, you can hear people going the same. Well-being is just a softy, touchy. When we talk about business as a force for good, we always talk about that. Doesn't mean you don't make money, because the more money you make, the more impact you can make.
We have to make money to be financially sustainable, right? Yeah. So that is sort of one aspect of success.
Yes.
But I think that we're really interested in how business is sort of moving towards more of a triple bottom line approach. So no, it's not just looking at the financial metrics, which obviously we know are important, but other metrics that we talked about earlier, the other data that we can collect around well-being, retention of staff, engagement of staff. Then there's the whole environmental piece, which we are not really kind of going into today, and that's not our area of expertise by any means, but lots of companies are now starting to track things like their carbon emissions, their energy consumption, looking at how can they make a more positive impact on the environment or reduce their negative impact on the environment. So that's sort of the third aspect. So the triple bottom line is basically people, planet, and profit. So you can measure things around people, measure things around environmental impact, and then obviously the profit and loss, we do that anyway, right? That's standard business practice. So we are on a journey to becoming a B Corp certified business. For those who don't know, B Corp stands for benefit company, or benefit for all. So
All stakeholders,
for
right?
all stakeholders. So at the moment, the purpose of a business in the UK is to generate profit for shareholders. That's in our company law and Companies Act. We are also signatories of a campaign that's being run by B Lab, who are the organisation behind the B Corp certification. Better Business Act is a campaign lobbying for change to the Companies Act. So when you become a B Corp, you have to change your articles of association at Companies House. So we've done that. So if anyone wants to look us up or Companies House and look at that piece of paperwork, it is there for public reference. And it basically says that the purpose of Thrivall is to benefit all stakeholders. So we are there to create good for our customers, our clients, the community at large, the people that we work with as our counsellor coaches and our training facilitators, anyone who we have any kind of relationship with. We're there to create something of value for all people. The traditional business model is that you're there to create profit for the owners of the business, right?
Grow through profit at any costs.
Yeah.
So,
And sort of going back to your story, I think when you have those toxic cultures, when you have those organisations where humans are sort of
resources to be used.
a resource, they're a cost to the business.
They can be chopped, cut.
When it's all about hitting a number, right? Humans become collateral damage on that kind of race to hit the number, and we are kind of wanting to be the antithesis to that, and
help companies be the antithesis.
Yeah, I think there's also another movement kind of going on around purpose-driven business. I think that's something that really speaks to me. I'm very motivated by a sort of higher purpose, and that's definitely sort of at the core of Thrivall. We have this purpose, which is about getting everyone thriving at work and beyond.
And that's exactly the same for us, obviously, in terms of sharing stories and, like exactly, as you guys are sharing with us today, to sort of give people the opportunity to realise that there are routes, and even if they feel as if they can't do it, there are support networks and people who can come into a business and actually lift them.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we can do it on a personal basis. Everyone listening to a podcast, obviously, an ability to hear and to learn from our experience, which is good. So there's a little bit of background mentoring, but there's also obviously from what you guys are doing,
there's a framework. And I also say on purpose, Richard, implore people to Google the purpose dividend that was created by, which is a research report created by
B Corp in partnership with Demos, who are a think tank. They've done a whole load of research into, again, business case for purpose-driven businesses. So again, it's not a nice to have. I think some people are like, oh, we need to know our purpose because it's part of our brand, and we need to tell people that, because there's a sort of expectation that people want to buy into something.
And today, most people probably almost go, I don't know what my purpose is, so they're about to go into AI. And,
right.
Please write me a purpose report.
Indeed.
And they need something more substantial.
Absolutely. It's got to be meaningful, right?
Absolutely.
And when they do.
So, the purpose dividend is basically saying that all businesses should become B Corp, essentially. We should all have a higher purpose that we are in service to. And again, putting the business case out there. So there's loads of stats now that they can show B Corp performs better through the pandemic.
And purpose-led businesses.
And purpose-led businesses. And there's basically a case for making it, that's the new status quo, that if we all had a clear purpose beyond just making profit, that it would unlock actually
more engagement,
more engagement, and more wealth for the economy.
Innovation as well.
Absolutely.
Because to be fair, if you have a purpose, so let's say, for example, we're manufacturing this microphone. So for a certain period of time, this microphone will be a fabulous piece of microphone, but in a few years' time, we won't need this on the table.
Right.
There'll be something, obviously, they're already small. It is something that almost you don't need to have that. So we've got to be innovative and to create.
And I think you make a good point. And I think this is what we're trying to. So when Anwen talks about the challenges of that purpose of that toxic culture where people are collateral to get to a number, and we say that Thrivall is the antithesis, and we look to to work with businesses to help to give them the people framework that they need to support their people. So we talk about basically like gravel driveways, and you can get that hexagon shaped matting that keeps all the gravel in.
So closing off.
Yeah, we liken our Thrivall is the hexagon mats that holds all your people together, and it gives you that kind of plug-in framework to plug into your existing systems and processes, but supports you and your people so that you can then focus on the strategy, the growth, the new opportunities, right? And I think that's what's really powerful, that when we say that we're the antithesis of that kind of money, just target driven, people are collateral, is because it's better for business. And that's the beauty about this purpose dividend report, and about the BBA, which is
Better Business Act.
Thank you, Better Business Act, is that this is not like, oh, wouldn't it be nice, like busman's holiday, everybody's dancing around, skipping, and it's like, no, this is not about that. Like, business is still hard, there's still lots of pressure, it's still challenging, and it's hard work, and we have to make that third of the triple bottom line, the profit. But actually, businesses who look after their people, businesses who have a high purpose, outperform other businesses in the long term.
And also they become, instead of being finite, which can often be the case, a lot of businesses become finite. They get to a point, they reach their purpose, they've done their purpose, and then it fades and falls apart.
We're talking about infinite businesses.
And now we're going
regenerative piece.
Yeah, then you're going to be regenerative, because as Thrivall, as with what you're doing, it's a lifetime. It's not a
ongoing, lifelong learning.
Because every single business has always got people coming in, whether because they're younger, they're coming in learning, joining the business through apprenticeships or learning programs, and there's always people who are getting, as they get older, and they're retiring and leaving the business. So that for every business, however good you make the culture, there'll always be people coming in and coming out.
And then within that, and then within that, you've also
System.
And you've got people then who are in that time. So the people who are in the business time having their own challenges, their own life events, and that's why it must be a continual kind of just as Anwen says, likening it to that gym membership. It's like, how are you keeping your mental fitness? How are you looking after your mental?
Because we need to keep it going, don't we? That's the key.
Absolutely, and that's why we implore people, whether you invest with Thrivall or not, to invest in your team, because it yields dividends for your business. And I want to, perhaps we can finish on we were lucky enough, Anwen got us tickets for the Better Business Act events that was in the Barbican. We're up there this week, and you had Holly Branson from Virgin Group. You had these other amazing business owners, but that's the level. So the Virgin Group is signed up to the Better Business Act. They have changed their articles of association. But one of the speakers that we had there was Professor Vince Cable, who you may know from the Liberal Democrats, and was also the MP for Business under, sorry, not the MP, he was Minister for Business under the coalition. He is also in his 81th year now, a director and building his own business as well as lecturing on business. What's really, really important is we talk about pioneering a new way of working, and we know that Thrivall does that, and we've got the evidence to prove that. But what really I think was heartening about that event was hearing Vince talk about Quaker businesses, and those are, do you remember Roundtrees? Cadbury's, Clark's, Lloyd's Bank. And so back in those days, and they talk about talking before shareholder supremacy, which is what Anwen talked about businesses are here just to make money for their shareholders. There was a time, and they think, Simon Sinek talks about, they think it's probably before the 70s, that before that happened, that would build villages for their workers to go. Absolutely, yeah. They would create schools to educate their children. They would build doctors' surgeries to look after their people. Now, as Anwen pointed out, we now have a much better education system than before the 50s, and we had the NHS and all those kind of things. But what they were doing there is looking after their people, yes, because it was the right thing to do, and because it was good for business. So what we have seen is that there's an amazing loyalty that you get from when you invest in your people for the right reasons. I think that's the point that Anwen was touching on earlier with Dr. Christie's work, is that if a colleague believes that your senior team have just invested in something just for themselves, like it's not selfless. It's like, we hope that does that make sense? That actually when the colleagues can see, and that's what we have found with the amazing businesses that we work with, is that when we're in that onboarding and when the managing director is in there saying, we are partnering with Thrivall because we believe, yada, yada, yada. And then they also and we talk about leading with vulnerability, they also, all of our directors have then gone, you guys might be a bit nervous about going on this program. Well, I am too. We can literally see the shoulders dropping, and that leveler that Anwen talked about is fascinating. And just seeing, seeing that palpable effect within a room of, oh, they're doing it for us. They're like, okay, that's cool. Then, and because those check-in sessions, which we talked about, are governed by a code of ethics that no one leaves. So our counsellor coaches aren't garnering data or feeding back anything. It is a session for that colleague and that colleague only, whether they're a managing director or whether they're a new starter or a graduate. It is a time that the company's invested in for them and them only. There is no business agenda. It is truly for them.
Thank you.
I think let's hope that more businesses will start to invest more in the people.
Oh, I think it's the future. It is
starting.
We are going in that direction.
Yeah, we're at the start of a movement, and we thank you for inviting us to tell more about pioneering this new movement.
We'll keep sharing everything about you. We'll share
Of course.
the details. I assume people can. We found you on LinkedIn. We're right at the.
So we're definitely active on LinkedIn. We also have a website, thrivall.co.uk.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much for this morning.
Yeah, we thank you both for your time. We hope you've really enjoyed this morning's episode with Dan and Anwen and all about Thrivall. And we please ask you, if you can, please, if you're following us on YouTube, please do subscribe and give us a like. And if you're listening on Spotify, please do follow us. Thank you very much for watching this morning. We hope you found it really informative. Thank you.